Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff and welcome back to Cheap Knife Week Volume 5. Today we're taking a look at the Smith & Wesson Big Benji. And yeah, this is a big knife. This is the biggest knife on the list this season. And it's also the one with the biggest price tag. This one just barely comes under our $30 limit. So it's got a lot riding on it, right? And by the way, this blade is filthy. I forgot to clean this knife after we went and did a review cutting, but actually it's ironic. See my fingers right now? A little bit pinkish, a little bit stained. That is prickly pear juice. I found some amazingly ripe tunas when I was coming back from doing the review cutting, and so I harvested them and I used this knife and forgot to clean it up. Did not rust, it doesn't look like, which is kind of awesome. But anyways, that's if my fingers are looking weird. It's not blood or anything. That's what it is, I promise. Okay, let's go ahead and get this started. So, blade length, sharpened edge is coming in here, and again, another Tonto. 2 Tontos in a row, huh? How about that? Sharpened edge here is coming in just under 3.5 inches if we measure all the way back to the scale. Blade length is 3.5 inches overall. You actually do get a little more blade length because obviously you've got the Tonto right here, which adds a little more, but there we go. Big knife. Definitely a big knife, and it feels like a big knife. All right. Let's bring out our size comparisons. There is the Rat 1. Yep, there you go. I always forget how big the Rat 1 is. And there's the Rat 2. Awesome. Let's go ahead, bring out the USA Made comparisons. There's the Spyderco PM2 and the Benchmade Bug Out. Sweet, sweet. Let's grab them good old Civivis. Praxis. And the Elementum. Wonderful, wonderful. And one last size comparison. Here is the knife reviewed for episode 1 of Cheap Knife Week, Volume 5. If you have not seen that, it came out yesterday, and actually I just filmed this video a few minutes ago. I'm on a roll today. I very rarely film more than one review when I sit down to film reviews, but I'm just full of energy tonight, so here we go. There's a size comparison of this piece of crap with today's subject. All right, what are we looking at for materials? Well, we have this Tonto blade of 8CR 13 MOV. We have a G10 front scale with an aluminum pivot collar, and we have a steel pocket clip. Thank goodness there's a pocket clip on this one. And a steel frame lock running on bearings. Let's go cut some stuff. Alrighty guys, day 2 of Cheap Knife Week, Volume 5. Coming at you with the Smith & Wesson Big Benji. The big knife this is. Let's go ahead and talk about that action. We are running on bearings, and we have a massive flipper tab. And that big whopping flipper tab allows you to get all the leverage into that flip. Feels actually very, very good. The detent is not the strongest thing, however. If I try, it's very easy to fail it. But because that flipper tab is so huge, I don't really think you'll fail it that often. So weaker detent made up for by a big old flipper tab. And it is pretty smooth on close, as you can see. Ergos, not amazing. Very neutral, but we've got some sharp edges all over here. So this is a knife that, oh, and I can feel that clip. We'll talk about the clip here in a little bit. That clip really digs in. This is a knife that, with gloves on, is probably very usable, but barehanded, no way, Jose. That feels atrocious. And again, it's not like the ergonomic profile is bad. It's just that we've got sharp edges everywhere. So, yeah, ergos, not great. Probably probably a D on ergos. Let's talk about the carry. So this is a big knife, but it folds up pretty compactly. We've got this big old money clip, pocket clip. Subtle, it is not. You also have this hook here that is really sharp. I would scratch myself on that several times. Don't like that. But the clip itself actually works surprisingly well. It's not like Gerber's big fat clips that are just a pain. This one's okay, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's okay. Knife itself's a little bit hefty, but you've got room in your pocket for other stuff, so there we go. All right, let's cut some stuff, shall we? Grab our cardboard. We have a Tonto blade of 8CR13 MOV, hollow ground on both edges, very, very thin. And yeah, this slices pretty dang well. This is actually a pretty fantastic slicing blade, so I am not upset at that at all. Let's do our rope pull. Felt pretty good. Go ahead and do some crunches. 1, oh yeah. 2, 3. Yeah, it's a heavy blade. You've got this Tonto, so you can get a lot of pressure down there at the front. This thing handles the rope very, very nicely. Let's grab that pull noodle. One, 2, 3. Holy cow. Whoa. Okay, I had to chase those a really long way, but I found some awesome cryptocrystalline silica, some cryptocrystalline quartz, which is pretty cool. But look at that. That is wafer thin. That right there, that's the kind of cutting I like to see. So as far as the blade goes on this thing, we're pretty solid. Go ahead and get you one last look. And let's get back to the table. Knives and rocks, my two passions. This cryptocrystalline quartz is actually pretty cool. I've been finding it all over the place. There's some good pieces. Most of the lithologies around here are basalt or rhyolite, and this stuff is growing in vesicles in said rocks, especially the rhyolites. It appears, and there's a really good piece I found. Where is it? That's a neat bit. That was pretty cool. I think this one's my favorite. It was in my pocket. It's pretty cool. Alright, so I'm working on doing all the review cutting for Cheap Knife Week right now. And we're going to go ahead and test the bottle opener on the Smith & Wesson Big Benji. This is a very aggressive bottle opener. Like, it's very sharp. Also, not sure how you use it. I guess like this. Let's talk about bottle openers real quick. Do we even need bottle openers anymore? I like bottle openers. I like opening bottles that aren't twist-offs, but most bottles are twist-off these days. So it's kind of ruining the need to have a bottle opener. But I like bottle openers, right? Look at this. Isn't this a cool little trick? I like bottle openers. It works. That's a twist-off cap, so it doesn't bottle open that well, but it works. Holy cow. That is good. I've never had this brand of soda before, but I found it at my favorite grocery store, Dollar Tree. I decided to give it a try, and yeah, that is pretty darn tasty. It's gonna be that time of year again, guys. Prickly pear season. Pick me a bunch of these tunas and look at how, oh, these things look fantastic. I'm gonna get splinters all over me, but look at this. Absolutely dripping with juice. I was not planning on picking prickly pear today, so I don't have any of my normal gear, but I've got a little Gatorade bottle that is going to work as a prickly pear repository. Alrighty, let's get into what I'm liking and not liking about this knife. Well, there's going to be quite a bit in this section, honestly, and that's a nice change of pace from yesterday's episode. First things first, I do think this is a kind of interesting looking knife. It's very striking, and that's something I always appreciate, is when something looks a little bit different. And you know what? There's not a whole lot out there that looks exactly like the Smith & Wesson Big Benji. And speaking of that, I like the name. That's cool. It's funny. We got some good alliteration going on there. I'm all about it. The build quality in this feels pretty good for a Smith & Wesson knife. We got a nice satin finish here, which I know is all covered up in muck, but it's a nice satin finish. I probably should clean it before I sat down to film this, but whatever. I do like the pop of red on the pivot collar. I'm a huge sucker for pivot collars. You guys know that, so I'm always about that. Next up, ergonomically, this knife is interesting. It's very neutral. The G10's got a good texture on it, and that's good. Access to the lock bar is amazing, which is awesome. The action is pretty good. It could be better. It could be better. The D10 is a little bit light, but this flipper tab is so huge and it sits so far above the pivot that it's really hard to miss a flip on this. Like, you hit that flipper tab, and unless you are a ghost, you're gonna flip it. So I like that a whole lot. The bearings do feel smooth, not the smoothest, but they're all right. And the knife actually makes neat sounds. I like that little reverberating ting on the close. That's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of that. Centering, this was something more, I guess, with fit and finish. Centering is good. It's a little bit off right now, but that's just because I've been using it. Centering was good out of the box. There's no blade play right now. There wasn't any blade play ever, so that's awesome. Appreciate that. Let's go ahead and talk about this blade. This is a very unique blade. This is a double hollow ground Tonto. Now, interestingly, this is not the first time we've seen this blade on Cheap Knife Week. Remember the Camillus Voracious, I think it was? That was kind of the same thing, a double hollow ground Tonto. Look how thin that gets. That is pretty extreme. We've got a decently thick, robust spine, but holy cow, we get down to a thin edge. And this thing does actually cut pretty dang well. 8CR13 is not my favorite steel, but I'm not too bent out of shape at this price. I'm actually decently very pleased with this performance here. Again, 8CR is not going to give you spectacular performance in terms of edge retention or even stainlessness or toughness or things like that, but the blade itself here with this geometry is actually fairly nice, and I do like Tontos quite a bit. You can use a secondary tip for opening boxes and stuff. You can crunch down on zip ties with this edge here. You've got a nice straight edge for breaking down boxes and stuff. It's pretty good, so I appreciate that. Next thing I appreciate is that this knife does have a secure lockup with no lock rock or anything. So, hooray, Smith & Wesson, for making a competent knife. And next thing is the pocket clip is actually not horrible. It does work, which is kind of surprising. I do not love pocket clips like this, but this one's not terrible. So, yeehaw. It's not the best pocket clip in the world, but it's not terrible. And you have the added feature of this little thing here for opening bottles. I'm not sure if that's a like or not. I just want to mention it. And it also has a lanyard hole, which is kind of neat. All right, let's go ahead and talk about some of my dislikes. Number one, the teeny tiniest T6 screws you have ever seen back here. It's ridiculous, really. By the way, this knife does look cool folded up, don't you think? I think so. So we already talked, like the D10 is not the strongest thing, but I don't really think that matters that much. Access to lock bar is amazing, but this lock bar is pretty sharp. It's not the most pleasant lock bar in the world. It's not the worst thing. I've definitely felt much worse. Gerber Asada, Gerber Mini Sada, or Slim Sada, whatever it was that I reviewed. But it definitely could be better. Speaking of that lock, I wish there was an over travel stop. There isn't. I think that's kind of a nice feature, and it's missing here, and it's very noticeably missing. Do I think you're going to overspring the lock in regular use? No, but you could, so, right? I don't know. Next thing, the ergonomics. I said they were good. The ergonomic lines are good, but you do have some hot spots. Like this clip digs into my hand quite a bit. You've got sharp edges all over the place. And so even though you've got a good ergonomic profile, there are some hot spots at some very unfortunate places, namely right here. You can see that right there. And on your fingers right about here. So I'm not the biggest fan of that. Next thing, this horrible, evil little device. When this knife is in your pocket, there were so many times where I was walking and I would scrape my arm or my hand on this thing, and it is sharp. I'm not kidding. This thing is no joke. Let's see. What do I have here that I can demonstrate this with? I've got a piece of paper that I use to demonstrate something else with. Let's see. I mean, this thing is sharp. It's kind of hard to demonstrate on this. It's sharp. Just take my word for it. It's owie. It scratched me a few times. I don't really like it. But I guess technically this knife is a multi-tool because it has that, so yippee-ki-yay, I guess. And really, those are my only major complaints. So let's go ahead and go into my final conclusions. Final conclusions. This knife has some issues. If this was a $50 knife from Civivi, I would be tearing them a new one. The sharp lock bar, this horrible little thing, the lack of an over travel stop, the hot spots in the hand, those would all be things I would light them up for. And they are not excusable here. But this is not necessarily a knife in the same class. And my main takeaway from this is that this is a really incredible blade. And this is honestly a very unique design. Even though I hate this little thing, it's kind of neat. It makes your knife into a multi-tool. Whatever. Right? Now, this is the most expensive knife that we're going to be taking a look at on Cheap Knife Week this week. So that's something that I need to take into account. Would I recommend you go and spend $29.99 on this knife? No, absolutely not. If you find one on sale for like 20 bucks or something, and you just got to have it, you know what? You could do a lot worse. You could do a whole lot worse. This knife, it's not a good knife, but it's not offensive. It's not terribly bad. It's very okay. And in a lot of ways, I appreciate it very, very deeply. So, that is going to be it on the Smith & Wesson Big Benji. Oh, and by the way, the branding all over the place, yeah, the branding is insane, but that's not something I really take into account on Cheap Knife Week. So, there we go. Big shout out to my channel members at the Cowboy level. Remember, if you want to vote on the final ranking for Cheap Knife Week this season, you can become a member and vote on that. The poll will be open until this Friday. So, if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and jump on that. For everyone else, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of what's coming tomorrow. Woo! There you go. And until then, I've been Gideon, and I'll see you, I guess, tomorrow or next time, whenever. Adios.